Hello and welcome to Strategic Compass. Today we are hosting Nelson Wong from Shanghai. He was with us some months back and he predicted what was in store between the United States and China. He's one of the leading political analysts of China and director of RimPac Center based in China, Shanghai. Now, Nelson, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you, Professor. It's an honor to be on your program again.
Well, thank you very much. It's our honor, and let's get actually going immediately because there is quite a bit to talk about regarding the latest developments between not only China and the United States, but also United States and the whole world, in a sense. As you were on our guest some months back, you predicted what sort of a severe competition was in store as Trump took over. And you also pointed out that China was actually ready for any sort of competition with the United States, either a competition of a friendly kind, very unlikely, you said, or a competition of a severe kind, or competition of a hostile kind. You know, we are in between all of this these days. Now, let me give us your take first on what is the latest, and then we will be talking about the fundamentals of what is going on today.
I think the latest is the tariff wars, actually. So everybody is aware of it. What is worthy of note, I would say, is that China was very quick and swift in its retaliation. When the Trump administration announced its first tariff increase. So, which means that China was prepared. And in actual effect, that China has the last 10 years to have prepared itself for this day. And that's why the country was so swift, because I think Chinese government was expecting what was coming. So, and that's why there was no surprise. And as I said, when we met last time on your program, I said, China does not have any unrealistic expectations towards America anymore. So, and I think the swift reactions of the Chinese government speaks all this time.
Okay. Well, can you also give us some details about China's preparation? It seems, the minute basically Trump administration pressed the button, it was as if automatic that the Chinese side pressed the other button, and it was so automatic, and it came up to the surprise of all the whole of many in the world, actually. And normally, until say 10, 20 years ago, China's response to this sort of thing would be a bit cautious, a bit prudent. Although China would say, it would be prepared to protect its national interests here and there. But this time it was just ready, whether you buy Chinese products or not, whether you actually apply this much tariffs to Chinese products, doesn't matter. We are going to basically retaliate exactly in kind. And then it means, so give us some details about the Chinese preparation. So China has actually expanded its export markets all over the world so that it could make up for any losses that it would incur in the United States market.
Yeah, let me start by saying that China has the last 10 years to prepare itself for this particular day. What I really want to convey is if you look at the figures of China's export to the US, and that figure has been brought down tremendously to less than 15% of China's overall export, which means that even if the export is wiped out to America completely, according to some expert predictions, that will only affect 0.5% of the country's GDP growth, in theory. Now, bear in mind that China has, as you said, the rest of the world to look for and expand its export destinations. The actual effect is way below that 0.5% threshold. So this actually shows how well the country has prepared itself. And that's one thing, by spreading the export destinations. Never put anything in one single basket. So that's one side of the preparation. Also, I think it shows that China has fully calculated the risks of a de facto economic decoupling with the US. Although we keep reminding our US counterparts and the general public in America that our two economies are actually interwoven. But if the other side decides they don't want to do business with China, then we have to be prepared for that. We cannot sit here and be hit just like that. So that's why we actually know what we are exporting to America. We have all the data and statistics. Well, mostly it's consumer products, but at very competitive prices. And China has kept reminding the American counterparts that for any tariff war, if the US was going to raise the tariff, the negative effect is actually taken on the American consumers, because that will increase the inflation. For sure, prices will go up. In the meantime, if you look at what China is buying from America, it's mostly agricultural and food products that China can easily find alternative suppliers. Now, yes, the Americans may say that, okay, we're also buying critical minerals from China, which is, critical for the defense industry, for weaponry. Yes, they can find alternative suppliers from other parts of the world. But please do not forget the cost of excavation and processing, and also the time that is required to finish all of that. So China does believe that China holds a much tighter grip over the US in terms of this competition. Although I think personally, I don't believe that this is going to, the situation is going to last forever, because sooner or later the two sides will have to come together to negotiate, to find a solution. This is not the only way. By increasing the tariff like this is not the only way to solve this trade imbalance for the US. Because the US, for decades, for more than half a century, the United States has adopted this policy, this financial policy of buying from the rest of the world, opening up its market and pay everyone with the dollar, which increased the liquidity of the dollar. And that's how they monetize, they weaponize the currency. So they're working, what Donald Trump is doing is actually working against the American interest.
Yep.
So, well, he's running his country based on his own understandings and perceptions. But, people outside the country are in no place to criticize him for what he does, actually. We all have to react and respond accordingly.
Well, yes, thank you on that. And the other point, I think, to basically support your argument all along, quite a number of American companies who have invested heavily in China, one of which was Apple. And its director general, Tim Cook, I think, was on record yesterday or the day before yesterday saying it is not just cheap labor that keeps us in China. It is the complete investment climate. You know, the way their engineers work, the way their technical personnel work, the way the workers actually produce more and more efficiently and in a better quality all the time. It's not just, dismantling the factory here, taking back to the United States, and then basically pressing the button and starting mass production in the United States of the same product. No, he's saying it is not that. So get your senses. You know, it's not going to be easy. It's going to be absolutely destructive for the United States. Now there is the other thing between China and the United States on the one hand, to a great extent, but also between the United States and to the rest of the world. That is the monetization of the economy. So you've got basically they have littered all the economies of the world with their dollars. Now they have stopped producing, and okay, it's a luxury way of life. You don't do much about production and all that, but then all you do print money and you buy somebody else's manufactured products and you pay in your dollar, and your dollar becomes your best weapon in the world. Now, with regard to dollar, I think China seems to have another, against the weaponization of dollar, China has another weapon. That is, it is bringing down its basically reserves on U.S. Federal Reserves. So basically, including dollars and the Federal Reserve's papers and all that, China is bringing its stocks down to a considerable extent. Now, on that point, what would you like to say to our viewers? Because my understanding is that over the last few years, China has really been selling U.S. Federal Reserves both dollars and papers and what have you.
You're absolutely right, Professor, to have pointed out that there are other avenues of this trade war between the two countries, actually. On that note, I would like to bring everyone's attention to the war between Russia and the West in Ukraine, actually, because what Russia has suffered among all the 23,000 and more sanctions from the West, their reserves in the West, in Europe and in America have been confiscated. Mm-hmm. And that has run a big bell to China to realize that, our competitors may not have any bottom lines as to what they might do. So
No
that's
bottom
why.
lines to their piracy.
That's right. So that's why China has, as you have pointed out, has been reducing its holding of U.S. Treasury bonds steadily. So what we are expecting in the days to come is China's resolve to keep reducing its holding of the Treasury bonds. So I think, yes, China does have more cards to play if we look at from our side of the table. But I'm always of the opinion that we should never, ever underestimate the capability of the other side. And nothing is perhaps as what it seems. Trump might have bigger dreams and bigger plans. And what we are seeing and witnessing and experiencing right now might be only the tip of the iceberg. There are a lot more to come. So we will really have to get ourselves prepared for the unpredictable, because what can be predicted about President Trump is his unpredictability. He's totally unpredictable in that sense.
It certainly is. Well, let's move then to the strategic aspects of the whole transformation of the world order. Now, with Trump back in the White House, he basically made some right steps in the right direction. For instance, trying to resolve the conflict in Ukraine, directly negotiating with Russia, and putting aside all the European, chatterers, if you like. The European Union has turned into some sort of chattering class with no proper strategic understanding of what they need to do. Now, with regard to Russia, do you see any sign, or do you feel do you see any danger to be directed at China at some in the years ahead, that Trump and the United States may want to take Russia out of China friendship, and then, together with Russia, put pressure on China to contain China and all that. The Russians seem to be adamant that, the Russia-China friendship and also alliance is on a solid rock ground. Yeah, what is your sense on that?
Well, I think there's been a lot of talk, actually, at different conferences and forums. The question has been asked by a lot of people, quite openly, actually, that because we are still fresh with our memories in the 70s when, the US government came to China to shake hands to establish diplomatic relations with China in order to win over China in its containment of the Soviet Union at that time. So, yes, with Trump back in power, he has openly declared that he's going to separate China from Russia. So he's showing a lot of, saying a lot of friendly words with President Putin, and then he's trying to win over Putin. That is a fact about what Trump is trying to do. Now, whether he's able to accomplish this, I have a big question mark, and I think we have all the reasons to believe that the relations between China and Russia has been taken not only to its all-time high, but also this mutual trust and strategic partnership has been built upon a full understanding with each other and the understanding of our two country leaders and of our governments about how we see the world moving forward. And I think the US government have proven throughout the years of its unworthiness of people's trust in them. So, and that's why we really, well, people in China do not have much doubt, and I've been talking to our friends and colleagues in Russia as well. And this topic has been brought up quite openly among ourselves. And I think our Russian counterparts have all confirmed that the time is different. And the relations between the strategic partnership between China and Russia is unbreakable at this stage, and also in the immediate future that we can foresee, because the relationship has built on quite a solid foundation. Number one, we have solved all of our border issues by having signed more than 100 contracts. So there is absolutely no dispute between China and Russia over our mutual border. And that's not easy. It's a big accomplishment. And number two, we both realize that we are against the hegemonic control of the world by one superpower, which is the US, and we are all looking for and aspire for a multipolar world, which means that the whole world is going to be governed and supported by not only two, not only three, maybe quite a lot more countries that have a regional power and influence. So countries like India, countries like Turkey, countries like South Africa, and many other countries in Latin America, countries like Brazil. These are all regional powers that all have to be recognized to form the pillars of a future multipolar world, and people will have to respect each other. So although I keep saying that multipolarity and a multipolar world really needs to be further defined, literally, because we talk about it, but we don't exactly know or agree on what it actually means. But what is there for sure is that we are not ready to see the future world to be dominated and governed and manipulated by any country. So that's an aspiration, and we all know that it is difficult to achieve just like this, but with devoted efforts and conviction, I think we are working towards that direction.
Good. Let's move on to the hegemonic power or hegemonic aspirations of the United States or the collective world, West. You know, there was a collective West until some months ago, until Trump came back to the White House. Now, with regard to the hegemonic aspirations of the United States or of the collective West, how would you respond to Trump's basically Trump's efforts to actually dismantle the collective West? Now, he's not only talking about Greenland to be part of the United States. The United States taking control of the Greenland. Also, Canada joining up. United States as the 51st, state of the United States, and all that. So basically, his disregard for the whole Europe. First of all, how do you basically? What is your take on all of that? And the second is, for instance, do the Europeans have any line of their own with regard to China? They used to be part of the United States, determined policies. They used to be part of the United States attitude towards China. Supposedly, they are supposed to come up with some sort of European policy line. Do you see any sign of that coming out of Europe, or they are still talking and talking in their chattering club?
Okay. Two major questions from you. Very good questions, actually.
Thank you.
Well, first of all, I have to admit that I have mixed feelings towards President Trump. On the one hand, I believe he has seen the major flaws in the governance of the U.S. Until now. Mm-hmm. So he's launching, if I may call it, a revolution domestically. And he's got a full plate, actually, domestically. Right? There are a lot of talks of Trump being the new emperor of the U.S. Actually, he's, you can hardly find another U.S. president that is as powerful as Trump right now. And he's running the country like he's running his own company, right? And so, yes, he promised something. He said he was going to do something, and he's doing it. Panama, Canada,
Greenland.
Yeah. Whether he's able to accomplish all of this, that's a different matter. But he's showing to the rest of the world that he's doing what he vowed he was going to do. All right. Yes, he said he's going to put a stop to the war in Ukraine within 24 hours. And he knew, I believe he knew that it's not possible. But he's doing. He's trying, right? So that's the good part of it. That's the good part of it. Because I think the rest of the world have suffered tremendously by the hegemonic control by the U.S. For over a century by now, actually. And this collective West, the so-called collective West, is really, a term that will go into history, for sure, to my understanding. But, yes, Trump has dismantled what was known as the collective West, which means that the U.S. was the big brother, and the European countries and some other Anglo-Saxon countries, even including Asian countries like Japan and Korea. They're all his followers, actually, junior brothers. And that brings to my answers to your second question about Europe. Yes, because under the previous scenario, Europe has never had its own autonomy or foreign policy since, the end of the Second World War. Because there isn't any foreign policy to talk about. Whatever the US said, they will just follow. And economically and militarily, they are actually the free riders. And that's why Trump got upset, and he wants to put a stop on that. Big Brother doesn't want to look after you anymore, and you have to look after yourself. So wake up. Of course, what we've seen at the Munich Security Conference was more than a drama. It was a disaster for Europe. Yes, it was a disaster for Europe. So, but I think to some extent it's good that Europe is waking up to the reality. Now, whether they can, with the 27 plus countries, to come up with a consensus, to agree on everything, that's a different matter, and it's going to be a difficult process. We've already seen, divisions of countries. And let us don't forget, if I may use conspiracy theory, let us don't forget that it is in the US absolute interest to dismantle the European Union.
It certainly is.
Not to mention the euro. So the fight between, or the war between America and Europe is still going to be on, actually, except it will take different shapes and on different avenues. But we are, set to expect some very bumpy years ahead. But again, that provides opportunities for other countries, And on that particular note, I have to admire. I have to say that I do admire the position of your country, Professor, for being a member of NATO, but not a member of the EU. And to start with, the EU was reluctant to admit Turkey, but I think nowadays it is Turkey that is not only reluctant, but is not even interested in joining the EU. So it actually gives a lot of flexibility and freedom for other countries like Turkey, like China, even like Russia, to forge its new relations with Europe or the European countries. Whether the European Union is going to hold on for a long time, that's a question, and it remains a big question.
Good. Now, just one note on the attitude of the European Union in general. It seems, for instance, they haven't been able to come up with any clear-cut policy towards China. This is my understanding from what you've said. And with regard to their general foreign policy, again, there doesn't appear to be any realization that they are going to be left on their own to confront Russia if they were to carry on with their old policy, if you like. So the European leaders are a different type of politicians, these days, and they are also undermining their political constituencies with now, for instance, the AfD, is coming up, and according to the latest polls, it is actually the biggest party now, according to the latest polls last week, I think. So the Europe is I think hopeless, as you said, 27 plus countries coming together, and then you have to basically try and get the understanding and agreement of all these countries on every given issues. So they can't come up with anything, any proper line of policy towards China that would be in their national interest, in the interest of the European Union, whatever it is. Now, let's move to the, I'll keep you a few more minutes, and then let's talk about the attitude of the Asia Pacific countries, and particularly the Far East, for instance, Japan, Korea, and China, for instance, when Trump was making all his threats about tariffs and what have you. For the first time, the three countries came together. For instance, Japan has been a steadfast follower of the United States in U.S. policy of containment of China and all that. But is there any sign, or can you see any sign in Japan's policy towards China, any difference? And also Korea's policy and other countries of the same type, all followers of the United States until recently.
Absolutely. You're very, correct and sharp in pointing out the coming together of the three countries, or the possible coming together of the three countries, China, Japan, and Korea. Let me remind you that there is actually an institution called the three-party, I forgot the trilateral secretariat. Yes, that is the term, the trilateral secretariat, which was initiated at the turn of the century. And so the mechanism is there for China, Korea, and Japan to come together to form a tax-free trading zone. That was the original idea, because when you look at the three countries' economic size, because all three, are almost or in the top 10 biggest economies of the world, with now Korea lagging behind from time to time, but sometimes within the top 10. So when these three countries can come together to trade under a free trade zone concept, the economic power that this unity can hold is humongous. So these three countries actually did see the need to forge this economic alliance, but it was brutally stopped by the U.S. government, the then U.S. government. So the mechanism is still there. But countries like Japan and Korea simply didn't, play up, to the expectation. But I think with Trump back in power now, and particularly with its attitude towards its traditional allies, it is, totally understandable that Japan and Korea will think twice now. And that's why we have seen signs of showing perhaps a rapprochement, or even forging the willingness to forge a closer working relationship with China. And that's totally expected. Now, also, when you say the West Pacific or the East, the West Pacific, because I think it is general understanding that this is the part of the world that is going to see a tremendous increase in economic performance in a worldwide context. Because first of all, we have the three countries, China, Korea, and Japan, having a very strong economies. But let us don't forget ASEAN. The ASEAN countries ASEAN country is now the biggest trading partner of China. And the concept, or the other economic zone called RCEP, that was started by ASEAN. And this organization, or this trading bloc, is now already included Japan, Korea, and New Zealand and Australia even. So, and this is why I think what Trump is doing is really putting the US on the wrong side of history. It is good that he's being practical. He's not talking about rules-based order. He's not talking about the democratic world, leader of the free world. That's good. He wants to do business. But perhaps the way he's handling, his reform, if I may call it, is a bit out of everybody's expectation. Because he's not living up to the expectation of people that what global governance is all about. Yes, he doesn't like any of the global organizations, but then how are we going to talk? How are we going to talk? He's handling the foreign relations totally on a one-on-one basis. That's a little bit wide of the mark, actually, because it is a lot more complicated than running a country, running a company. And also, the global arena is not the stock market. It's not the stock market.
No.
That your gain is always taken on the loss of another. Well, because that's where we talk about win-win situation.
There is the real economy, and plus, even in your own company, you don't take so risky decisions all the time.
Exactly.
You may take risk when it is worth it. Otherwise, there are words like caution, prudence, and
that's why I said he was like he's like an emperor instead of a president, or a president of a company. Even he doesn't have a board of directors or a supervisory board to overlook him.
Certainly, certainly not.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much. We've come almost to the end. If unless you have some other remarks you would like to make, we can call it a day. Thank you very much for joining us.
Well, thank you, Professor. Let's hope that our way forward is not going to be so bumpy. Let's get ourselves prepared, and better prepared for the unexpected.
Well, 2 points here. For the States, let's hope that it is not going to be terribly bumpy in the days and months and years ahead. But for experts like you and me, who make their living out of all these bumpiness, it is just my selfish, selfish side of me.
Thank you for your honesty.
Well, that's if there is the more bumpy it is, the more business we have. Thank you very much indeed, and hope to see you either online again in the months ahead or face to face somewhere. In a international conference. Bye bye for now.
Thank you, Professor. Bye bye.